Welcome to Messier Mantra. I'm your host, Mike Messier. We have a return guest this episode. She's a great friend of mine. Her name is CORINNE Southern.
Hi.
Hi. Burlesque producer, actor, burlesque performer, and a lot of stuff. And we were talking about even you've done some singing and musical theater and stuff like that. Is that true?
I've written some songs, and I've done some recording of songs, and I've sang with some bands. I would love to get back into that, actually. It's hard. Being in a band is a little bit like being in a relationship.
Right.
You have to find the right mix, but you have to find the right mix with like 4 or 5 or 6 people.
Right.
So, but hey, I'm always looking if anyone wants to join a band.
And it's tough because you have like a bass, say for instance a bass guitarist, a lead guitarist, a drummer, a keyboard, and a singer, and then everybody's kind of really have to gel together. And even bands, you look at your Fleetwood Macs or whoever, they just have those issues,
Yeah.
So it's tough.
Well, even really dysfunctional people can make really good music, that's for sure.
That's true. Maybe that's your mantra this week.
Oh God, I hope not. No, I would like a non-dysfunctional band. But,
right.
And my degree is in musical theater specifically, so I've done some musicals, and I love musical theater. And musical theater and burlesque are like right next to each other, very parallel. So
let's go back into your history of education, and when you're getting the musical theater degree, what shows were you in that were kind of the highlights, that favorite shows type of thing?
I did Assassins with Jimmy Calitri, and that was a really great show. I love Stephen Sondheim, so that was a really good time. I got my degree in musical theater, and I studied with Fred Sheff, who is an incredible vocal coach, great teacher, and a number of other really talented teachers. But I've done more straight acting.
Right.
I've done a little bit more film recently, and just straight plays. And most of my college career, I was cast more in actory type plays. I even did this one incredible piece with Casey Seymour Kim directing called A Mouthful of Birds.
Right.
It's a Carol Churchill play, very avant-garde, super weird, but super fun. We had a really good time, bonded with the cast.
What was it about, the Mouthful of Birds show?
It's a retelling that they made in workshops of the Bacchae, which is a Greek myth all about women who are taken over by Dionysus, and they become Bacchants, and they are drinking and in a frenzy and doing things like having orgies and being crazy and violent, and they go up into the woods. And then this guy, Pentheus, his mother is one of the ones up in the woods, and he goes up there to see what's going on because Dionysus tricks him, and all of the women think he is a mountain lion or a lion, and they tear him apart and eat him. And then it was this weird kind of retelling of that myth, mixed with modern day stories that kind of picked out themes from that, like alcoholism or anger or lust or things like that. And I played an alcoholic acupuncturist named Yvonne.
Yvonne, the alcoholic acupuncturist, which might be really painful for the patient, so to speak.
I certainly hope my acupuncturist isn't drunk. But then it was fun because my little vignette, I got to really use my burlesque training because for like my 10-minute scene that focused on my character's part of the story, I was in other scenes, but that was my kind of like moment in the show. I had about 4 or 5 or 6 changes, and they were all quick changes where I'd put something on and take something off, and there'd be another outfit underneath, and I had to run off stage, and I think the costume shop was cursing my name because they had to build all these costumes for me. Yeah.
When you do live theater, musical theater, burlesque, or acting in a traditional play, what would be considerations, obstacles, challenges, and rewards that someone not involved in these creative mediums, like someone who's just watching our show and just more of a person who's kind of a watcher, a spectator in the audience, but might be interested what goes on behind the scenes? What type of things would you educate them about?
Well, being a good audience member is the best thing in the world, especially because in burlesque I'm doing a lot of work in clubs, and I can see you. I can see you if you're on your cell phone. I can see you if you're rolling your eyes. We can hear you if you're making comments. So just be there, be attentive, be present, enjoy yourself if you paid for the ticket, it's funny, I can't tell you how many times people, and well, it happens less than I guess maybe this makes it sound, but most people come out and enjoy themselves. But sometimes you'll be in an event and there's just someone who so clearly doesn't want to be there. If you don't want to be there, don't go.
Right, right. And maybe they've bought a ticket and didn't know what they were in for, or maybe they're with friends or family or a spouse that kind of, hey, let's go see them. And it's tough. And I've done that with stand-up comedy where you're kind of doing your best and then you have these, you know, there's a famous Mike Messier story, or infamous probably, not famous, but there were some people playing photo hunt in the comedy club. It wasn't even a comedy club, it was like a bar. So these nice people are playing photo hunt, and your pal Mike Messier kind of went off on that when I was doing my comedy, because it was kind of disrespectful, you know, that they were doing that.
Particularly with burlesque, if people are taking unauthorized pictures.
Right.
First of all, you don't really look, nobody looks good on those cell phone cameras. Nobody looks good.
Right.
So you get a lot of unflattering semi-nude pictures of you.
Yeah.
And then there's also this whole idea that there are some people, a lot of people, I perform burlesque under my legal name.
Right.
So I am CORINNE Southern, and I'm very proud of what I do.
Yes.
There are not many performers that do that.
Okay.
There are a lot of performers that have day jobs. A lot of women in burlesque, or men, are educated, and they're teachers and lawyers and doctors and people with office jobs and, you know, professional careers, so they go to great lengths to kind of hide that, because I actually have a friend who was let go from her job as a teacher because she was a burlesque performer. And she wore wigs when she performed. She went by a different name. But there's still connotations, and a lot of people, when I tell them I do burlesque, they don't even know what it is.
Right.
Let alone, you know, or they think they know what it is. So unfortunately, this teacher who was doing nothing illegal and nothing wrong and was doing a great job at school, because she was associated with something that they maybe consider too sexual for a teacher to be, or a woman or a person to be involved
whatever
with.
point of view they had, which was not probably in a legal standpoint, not even legal.
Yeah, well, and it definitely, somebody had taken this video and outed her intentionally, which was sad. So, but that's part of the reason why I do what I do, is to hopefully make it okay for women to develop this sort of attitude about their bodies as a performer. I mean, I've come up against that sort of stuff in my personal life. People don't always understand.
Right.
And, you know, it took my mom several years to even come to see a show, and now I can't get her to stop coming.
Wow.
So, hi, Mom. But
is that just, you know, maybe is that when a family member like your mom or anyone else comes, is that something that goes through your head, like, oh, you know, such and such in the audience, or you just block that out and concentrate on your own performance?
A little bit of both. It's really exciting for me to have most of my friends and family, almost everyone that I know is really supportive. I have a couple extended family members that have kind of said, well, we are aware that you do that, but we don't really understand it and we don't really want to talk about it.
Right.
And that really hurts, because I put so much of my heart and my soul into what I do.
Right.
My shows are my artistic vision, and they're the results of hard work that I put in that's not so fun, like emails and things like that. So beyond all the glitter and the glitz and the glam. And I'm very, very proud of the scene that I've helped to cultivate in Providence.
Yes.
But at the same time, you know, I did a show once, this is such a good story. In high school, I did The Man of La Mancha, and I played Aldonza. So it was my senior year of high school, and this kid, Ben, was playing in the orchestra pit. I don't remember what he played. I think he might have been a drummer. Several years later, I was doing a show in Providence, and Rhode Island, New England. The world is this big now.
Yeah.
And I did my act, and I do an act where I pop balloons. And at the end of the act, I popped a balloon right over both of us, not knowing who he was. And afterwards, he walked up to me and he said, well, CORINNE, that's a far cry from Man of La Mancha.
Oh, man.
And I was like, who are you?
Right.
It really scared me, because it took me a moment. I was like, how do you know me? And then we kind of talked about it. But And one time I was recognized by the AAA guy. I blew
Oh,
a tire.
wow.
Yeah, I thought I was famous. I was on my way home from a rehearsal, and I popped a tire, like on a pothole.
Right.
And it was in South County, and he came out of nowhere, and he was like, I don't want to be rude, but are you a burlesque performer? And I'm like, yeah, how do you know that? He was like, my wife took me to one of your shows.
Okay, yeah.
I'm like, oh, good.
So it has a happy ending, so to speak, and safety as far as the wife thing.
Oh, yeah.
You know, are there creeps that come to these things? I'm just curious.
Yeah, you know, there's a handful of creeps. Only once have I had to fire someone from a show that was backstage being creepy.
Right.
It was a comedian who I had hired a couple of times previously with no problem. And then this one night, I don't know, maybe he had too much to drink or just felt comfortable because he'd been at the show a couple times, but he, you know, groped some of my girls and said some inappropriate stuff. And I didn't find out about it until after,
right.
you know, everything happened. So yeah, there are some, you know, I'm not unaware of the fact that what I do has connotations. Like, it's definitely sexual and sexy. It's more than that,
right.
but it is those things. And there is nudity. It's adult entertainment. It definitely is. It's not for kids.
Right.
You know, don't bring little Jimmy, which has also happened to me.
Oh, boy.
I was at a show and I came out and there was a little kid there and I looked at his mom and kind of said, I don't know what to do. I can't stop. And we kind of made eye contact and had that like psychic conversation that you have with people. And she took the drink menu off the table, which was, you know, this tall, put it in front of him and pushed his head down.
Right.
So he was like hidden.
Wow.
Kid's eyes were like bugging out of his head. But for the most part, my audiences are couples or female, predominantly female.
Yes.
I have a lot of really good regulars, and I have most of the riffraff is, you know, kept out. Like we don't have too much of an issue. I've had some experiences that have, you know, left a bad taste in my mouth, or someone said something or done something, but predominantly overall it's positive.
Yeah.
I wouldn't keep doing it if I, you know, didn't have a positive experience. For every, you know, one person that says something creepy or does something inappropriate, there's 20 women who come up to me and say, hey, you're curvy and you show your body, and now I feel a little bit better about myself, or that was beautiful or entertaining or funny, or, you know.
And I was going to say that any profession has creeps, whether it's business accounting or, you know, a restaurant or the groups I'm in, the pro wrestling groups, or film, independent film, you know. And so any group is going to have that. But I think what I was getting at is kind of like what your answer is, that there's a small amount, but everyone else predominantly is really cool.
Yeah, I would say it's mostly educated people.
Right.
The crowd tends to skew a little bit older, which is nice. And it depends also on like the types of variety acts, because burlesque and vaudeville and variety, so it depends really who you have in your show, the type of crowd you're attracting. And I only hire people I really like and that I really trust, and that tend to bring in good people with them. So. And
we were talking last time about the history of burlesque. Let's talk about, because that's a big conversation. But
it's huge.
Where do you think it, in a, you know, relative nutshell, because we've got a lot of time, but where did burlesque come from? Where the origins?
So in the 1800s, there was this woman who brought a troupe called the British Blondes to America, and they were really the first burlesque troupe, and they were these Victorian women who were doing plays, and the scandal was that they had tight stockings on.
Okay.
And so you could see their corset, you could see their stockings, so you could see the outline of their legs, and that was really scandalous. But for the most part, they were doing comedy plays.
Right.
And there was sex jokes and tongue-in-cheek comedy and that sort of stuff that went with it. And then as burlesque evolved, the dancing girls in the costumes, mostly pushed by like Ziegfeld, the Ziegfeld Follies.
Right.
They kind of pushed the showgirl to the forefront of these shows. So in the 1800s and early 1900s, you see more variety and more type of like vaudeville acts in burlesque and acrobatics and things like that, animal acts. And then it starts to go more towards the showgirl becoming the center of the show in like the 40s and the 50s and the 60s, which is commonly known as the golden age of burlesque. That's where you get your Betty Page and you get your Tempest Storm and Blaze Star and all of Candy Bar, all those women who are like really famous for being strip teasers.
Right.
And then there's this common misconception that burlesque went away in the 1970s and then had this resurgence in the 1990s and the late 80s. And that isn't really what happened. Meryl LaGuardia, I took a really great class with a performer, Sailor St. Clair, and a producer from Seattle, and she taught this class about Broadway and burlesque and how it didn't go anywhere. What ended up happening is LaGuardia kind of said to everybody, this entertainment is really only appealing to the lowest common denominator. It's really only appealing to perverts. And so there's no, he said that there was no desire for the masses to have that type of entertainment. And then what you see is it really gets absorbed into musical theater and into vaudeville and into comedy. So I'll watch movies from like that time period. Right. And you'll see burlesque. There's a beautiful Sid Charisse like ballet burlesque piece from the movie Silk Stockings. Okay. And you see, so I can sit there and even today in popular culture, I'll be watching a television show or a movie like just Magic Mike XXL just came out, and the number where he has the Pepsi machine and he's dancing up on the Pepsi machine and dumping Pepsi and Cheetos on himself. Like that's a complete burlesque number, 100%. So really what happened is it kind of got absorbed into mainstream culture. They shut down all of the burlesque houses, and that's when kind of table dancing and strip clubs and pole dancing started to happen. And then in the 1990s, you have this neo-burlesque revival that really started in New York and then spread out, and now you have stars like Dita Von Teese who are fashion forward and who are, kind of bringing burlesque back. And that's the movement we're in now, is neo-burlesque.
Wow. So neo-burlesque, what you just said is very interesting to me, all the nuances. And when we talk about the 70s, I was thinking about some of those films. I don't know, Cabaret was a film, and then there was a few others. And
sure, or even Gypsy, that was a 70, So, and the funny thing too is nowadays for neo-burlesque, it's a lot more about feminism, body positivity, positivity for the LGBT community. There's people that use mixed media. There are people that are using different elements. So the classic burlesque, which you'll definitely still see elements of, and I love classic burlesque. That's my sort of wheelhouse, but you'll see that, and now you'll see performers with political agendas or religious agendas. It's a little bit more of an art form and less of a striptease, because it's if you want that, you can go anywhere and find nudity. You can find it on the internet. You can find it at a strip club. So people aren't coming to burlesque shows for that. It's part of it, but that's not what they're coming for.
It's more of a higher ground show. It's like all.
I kind of like to think of it like burlesque is Ben and Jerry's, and strip clubs are like McDonald's ice cream cones.
Okay.
Either way, you're eating ice cream. One of them you get quick and dirty and it costs you $2. One of them you might spend a little bit more. You might go out of your way to make it more of an experience, enjoy it more, put some hot fudge on it. So, so it's just, either way you're eating ice cream. Okay. It's just what kind you're eating.
Well, I think the burlesque to me sounds much more artistic, I guess.
Yeah, there's a huge level of artistry that goes into it. But I don't want to, disparage, because there's artistry that goes into strip clubs too, and I have a lot of respect for women who do that type of work, and it's very hard,
Yes.
So, and I think that it's all closely tied together. And it's funny because like after my shows, people come up to me, or if my boyfriend's in the audience, and they'll say, well, how can you let her do that? And he's like, I don't let her do anything.
I was going to say, I know you a little bit. I don't see anyone letting you do anything. You do what you want. You're someone who does what they want to do, and then positive things too. So very interesting to me. Where is there, so you're talking about the neo-burlesque movement, or that's kind of where we're at now. Yeah. Do you see anything coming up on the horizon? Or is it just hard to tell what's next with the art form?
Well, my work, what I do every single day is I try and legitimize burlesque as an art form. And I don't look at other burlesque shows as my type of competition. My competition are people who are taking their $15 or $20 and they're going to the movies, or they're going to any other sort of entertainment that's not burlesque. Right. Because if someone knows what burlesque is and they go to one show, chances are they're probably going to want to see more and they'll come to mine. So I think that where burlesque is going is hopefully going to be into a more legitimate place where people are going to see shows as a regular form of entertainment, just like they go out to dinner or go out to the movies or go out to a concert.
Right.
I would love to have, and there are some big scale shows like Dita Von Teese and her Strip Her Way tour, or they had Peep Show in Las Vegas, which had Holly Madison from Playboy fame.
Right.
So there are some big budget shows like that, and that's really what I would like to see happen, at least for myself. You know, I would love nothing more than a fully, scripted, costumed, set, designed, new music, original, just a complete original play with burlesque elements in it. That's my dream.
Is Las Vegas the capital of burlesque, or more like New York City or LA?
There's vibrant scenes all over the world.
Right.
I know that on the East Coast, Boston has a nice little scene. New York, there's burlesque in Vermont, New Hampshire. There's a hotbed of burlesque in Chicago. There's a lot in Montreal, Canada, and Vancouver. California, Seattle. There's a very vibrant scene in DC, great vaudeville scene down in DC. There's some, New Orleans has a big burlesque scene. So it's definitely out there. You just have to know where to find it. And Vegas, I would say that there are different aesthetics for different regions. Like New York is a little bit more, say, neo-burlesque, a little bit more artistic, a little bit more physical, whereas Vegas, you get more showgirls, it's more about your appearance and your costuming. In LA, it's definitely a lot about, your appearance. Just like there are differences in being a New York actor or an LA actor.
Right.
Like there's just different things that they value. My friend who produces out there, no matter who she hires for her shows, knows that she has to have a blonde, pretty girl on the poster, otherwise people don't come because that's the aesthetic that's valued there.
Wow.
Whereas if you tried to market the same thing in New York, they'd be like, this isn't art. We could see pretty blonde, naked women anywhere. So
right.
It just really depends on what you're going for. I try and push my show from a place of variety.
Right.
So you're going to get a little bit of everything, a little bit of every gender, body type, race, religion, a little bit political, a little bit classic, a little bit this, a little bit that. So you can kind of see a nice cross-section of what burlesque is going on. I tried to make Aurora After Dark a community event.
Right.
I want people to have the opportunity to perform and the audiences to have the opportunity to see it. So
two words came to mind, two questions or statements, I guess. Empowerment. Talk about the different types of people that you're featuring as far as the performers, body sizes and shapes and different ethnicities, or even the transgender community, like the empowerment for everybody, not just for Betsy Barbie doll or whoever.
Sure. Different things inspire and empower different people. So, what works for me, like some women might feel that modesty for them is what gives them empowerment. So I'm in no way saying that anything that women do to choose to be more modest is wrong. That being said, I've never been particularly modest.
Sure, right.
So I found that clothing and body shaming and the cosmetic industry and all of that has found ways to kind of tell women to be less, or men even are victim to this. People are victim, our society. So I found that burlesque has really been a place that is accepting of all different types of people.
Right.
Within reason. We don't like jerks.
Yeah, right.
But for the most part, anybody can have any sort of talent and become a burlesque performer. You can be a juggler and be a burlesque performer. You can be a costumer and have a burlesque, And it's less about fitting into a stereotypical mold and more about celebrating who you are as a person. And I think that's incredibly empowering.
So July 9th at Aurora, people...
7th.
July 7th. I'm so sorry. Maybe I'll be at the 9th. Where is everybody?
I also, on the 27th of April, we'll have a show at Aurora as well, which is kind of a variety burlesque show.
So the 7th, April 27th at Aurora?
April 27th, yep. And then July 7th is Shakespeareautica, which is the company I've launched with Serious Bitness and Gilted Lily, and we are combining Shakespearean acting with classic and modern burlesque.
Yes.
And they were both actresses, and we're casting right now for that. We have the Shakespeareautica.com you can go to, and casting submissions are live right now.
That's exciting.
Yeah.
And the other thing I was going to ask is, you just mentioned briefly the political, and I think in the context I'm going to ask is, this is a political hot season, and we've got some real characters in the political hunt for president especially, and to me, what a way you can just
Absolutely.
Parody of these people, whether it's Trump or Hillary or Bernie Sanders, politics, wherever you feel on the political range, who you like, who you don't like. But these are just never seen characters like this before.
Yeah. One of the performers, Velvet Revolver, that just had a birthday, but I hired her and she did a great act for our David Bowie tribute show.
Okay.
To I'm Afraid of Americans, where at the end she pulled out a Donald Trump-like mask and she hula hooped
right.
while she was Donald Trump, and it was very funny. So there's definitely, and I've always wanted to do a Sarah Palin burlesque. I think that would just be so funny with the little Tina Fey glasses. And they're definitely like lampooning political figures is a lot of fun, and I think most people in the performing arts, but I definitely skew towards liberal. So,
right.
And what I do is very feminist. So there's, if I'm any farther left, I'd probably fall off the edge of the world.
Yeah, you'd be like, just so left is right or something.
They just have to hand me, my comrade shirt, like I would, but so feel the burn, but
there's so many things out there that I thought of the broad stroke, just the comedic. Even it's kind of a self-parody. Not to get too political. 2 minutes left in the show, but just these people are so ridiculous this year. I think it's a different or their contrasts is what I mean by ridiculous. They're so far different from each other, type of thing.
It's very polarizing, and I think that there are some people in this country that would do well for a little bit more kindness. I just kind of, some of the stuff I look at and I'm like, what made you so bitter and hateful towards something just because you don't understand or don't know? So I think that, I hope that we can all kind of come together as a nation and think about what we want for our children and for our future,
Yeah.
It's just, I don't know. If I didn't laugh, I'd cry.
Yeah, well, I understand. I know. Give me a mantra, Corinne. Corinne Southern mantra for the Messier Mantra, episode 2. What do you think?
Shoes first, then corset.
Okay.
That's my mantra for today. Shoes first, then corset.
Is that how it goes? Okay, yeah.
Yeah, if you do it backwards, you're going to have a hard time.
Oh, I get it. I didn't even realize what you're talking about. So you put the corset on, and then if you were to do that, it would be, you can't bend over to get your shoes on.
Exactly.
Wow.
So shoes first, then corset.
We have a minute left, but I imagine that when you're backstage for these burlesque shows or any type of, theater, the amount of work and the quick turnover between the costumes and the makeup and everything's just going to happen bang, bang, bang.
It's fun backstage. It's fun. And I have good people I work with, and, we have a good time. Usually that's like the best moment is when you're backstage and you just come off stage and you're sweaty and glittery and happy on that performance high, and your friends are backstage high-fiving you. It's a very supportive community, at least if you hire the right people with anything. So.
Right. So July 7th.
July 7th, April 27th, Aurora, Providence.
People are going to come out and see you, and I think they're going to have a great time. So anything else you want to say for our audience before we wrap up?
Support local burlesque. Just take your money and put your butt in the seat.
Right.
That's really what we need. And tell your friends. Tell your friends it's happening.
Get out of the house. Get out of the apartment.
Yeah, get off the internet.
Stop watching. You're right. The internet and cable TV and so on and so forth.
If you don't come to my shows, I can't continue to post semi-naked pictures on the internet. So
that's what I've been saying for years.
Ruins everybody's time.
Corinne Southern, thank you so much. Thanks for watching this episode of Messier Mantra with Corinne Southern. We invite you to our next episode of Messier Mantra.